Something feels off.
Yes, what is it, sir?
I can't help but feel like I forgot something I was supposed to do today.
Something important?
Well, if I've forgotten, I guess it can't be.
Help me. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, over the last week we had the release of Title Update 4 and also the beginning of the lumenhymn festival. And as is often the case with Monster Hunter, the developers put a little bit of extra spice in there, a bit more detail than you would often expect from other games, the kind of thing that just shows you how much these developers really care about the game that they are making. And then aside from that, there's also some interesting information about the Gogmazios fight and things that I want to share. That said, let's start with Gogmazios-centric stuff. The first one is more of a tip for the fight, but a useful one. The lava vents on the floor of the arena in Phase 1 can be triggered by certain attacks from Gogmazios himself, but you can also just set them off yourself with torch pods that you pick up from the spark flint around the arena. These will then spew out lava, and if you time it when Gog is standing relatively still above them, you can get a real good chunk of damage on him right then and there. That's the only real tip or combat help that I've got, but the rest is all just fun details and interactions. A really cool one with Gogmazios himself is the way that he interacts with Dual Blade's Beyblade attack when he is flying. In Phase 3, he spends a good chunk of time flying, and because of his sheer size, if you pop a wound and then try to Beyblade down him, the flapping motion of the wings is so wide and fast that Dual Blades will just sort of flip around and fly in the air for ages trying to catch up to the wing that it's attached to, which just looks hilarious to me, so I wanted more people to see this just silliness. Some other things coming from the community the last few days then, someone worked out the number of vertices in Gogmazios' model, which, to try and explain it the simplest way possible, more vertices is more smooth body, more smooth texture. It's essentially a measure of the raw detail of the model. But they then compared this to the amount of vertices of Malzeno, the Elder Dragon from Sunbreak, and it compares 64 times over in this image, which was still actually a few Malzenos under, and according to my own math based on the numbers that were given here, right around 68 and a half Malzenos is equivalent to one Gogmazios, or if you word around the number, you would say 69 Malzenos in Gogmazios, which is a sequence of words I don't think anyone ever thought would be created with the English language. But yeah, just an interesting note on the raw difference in texture quality between Sunbreak and Wilds on an actual analytical level with a couple of monster examples. On a somewhat similar wavelength then, someone made a size comparison of Gogmazios' model to Zoh Shia's model, just to show how much bigger Gogmazios is, and it is very, very noticeable when they are put right beside each other like this. It's not like a mind-blowing detail, but I do love when people do things like this to sort of show the differences within the game. I think it's fun, so now you've seen it too. Still sticking to tar to Gog related things of note, but getting a little bit more separated. After you finish the Gogmazios assignment, a bunch of hunters will have exclamation marks above their head, showing that they have fresh dialogue for you to go through, and that part is obvious. The exclamation marks make it very clear, so you probably know all of that stuff. But after you have that talk with Gemma, after her exclamation mark goes away, you do actually unlock some more dialogue with her through her conversation option, one where she just talks about how cool Nadia is as a hunter, but then a separate one where she expands on that, saying that Nadia protected her when an Elder Dragon attacked Dundorma, talking about the whole rusted Kushala invading part of the Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate storyline, and she even references the part where Aiden, who was known as the Ace Cadet in 4th Gen, before getting the full first name treatment that he got in Iceborne, he got blasted in the chest by a rusted Kushala during the cutscene before the climactic battle against that monster too. Now with Fabius, Nadia, and Gemma all together in the Forbidden Lands, and Aiden last seen in the New World, I have to wonder if in the expansion we might get the whole Ace crew back together with maybe even some friends that Aiden brings from the New World, just to really sort of make it a big happy reunion for everyone, even if the New World people are only a reunion for us as the player, not even our actual hunter in game. But the main point of this was just to say, hey, you may have not noticed this dialogue, and it's just a fun throwback. While we're talking about Gemma then, let's jump out of game for a second. The official Monster Hunter Twitter account posted some concept art of Gemma, which seems to have stayed pretty much how she ended up in the game in her default outfit at least, but it's nice to see some details into the thought process. Basic Google translating the text here, it shows us the things they thought were most important. The top left is just labeling her as a smithy, it's like the title of the concept art. The blue text in the top right calls it a sloppy side tail, which I think is obviously going to refer to her ponytail. And then the blue text under the Kutku plushie just translates to amazing volume of hair with an exclamation mark, and something about that just made me chuckle to myself a little bit. Bottom right, it mentions that the the caravan symbol is very clear and distinguishable when you're looking at it, but that it should be hidden by her hair more often than not, because what they wanted was for it to be an easily followable thread for those who already know her character from 4th gen Little Miss Forge, while also trying not to make it too blatantly obvious to the point where it like overpowers the entire rest of her character design for the people who didn't experience 4th gen Monster Hunter. Another fun one with an NPC member of our hunting unit is Alma's new outfit during the festival. Silly, sacred bird, human hybrid costume thing that is honestly quite freaky, but a fun part of it is that it essentially removes her glasses if you look at her up close, and that's not the fun part itself, but what's really neat is that one of the quest end animations you can get in this game is Alma walking up too fast, dropping her glasses on the ground, and then you pick them up and give them back to her so she can see again. Except in this outfit, she doesn't have glasses, and they are instead represented by her fake eyelashes. So her fake eyelashes fall off, and you pick them up and just sort of hold them in front of her, and she puts them back on. She clumsily drops her eyelashes, and you give them back to her, and it looks hilarious. I love stuff like this in this game. And on another note of silly stuff, but stuff that is very clearly intentional, and that's something that someone, at least one person, put a fair bit of effort making happen, considering that only a small percentage of the player base are likely to ever see these things and realize them. But they are part of the lumenhymn festival event, and they are specific interactions with funky sacred costumed palico NPCs that are running around the hub. The obvious stuff that you probably know about just because it's right at the entrance of the Grand Hub itself is this woman with a barrel full of balloons, an infinite supply of balloons. She will hand out balloons to cats, cats will come out and just grab balloons out of the barrel sometimes, and if a cat ever grabs more than 3 balloons, they will float up into the sky. The common variation of this is they float up a little bit and then they fall down and hurt themselves a bit, but then they get picked back up by the NPC, which is just a little lovely interaction, and then she gives them more balloons. But the much rarer variation of this is a palico that does not let go of the balloons when there are too many and they start floating up. When this happens, they continue to float all the way up. And out of pure curiosity, dear, I did follow this cat for literally minutes as he floated around the hub, outside to the background of the hub even. And then even then he started to continually lower FPS as he got further into the distance because he started becoming part of the background in the way that the game sort of generates the background. And then he eventually floated entirely out behind a hill and then disappeared completely from view, and then I never saw him again. But he was floating away for a very long time, like literally minutes, and the majority of the time I was just giggling to myself following him in the camera mode, just thinking how ridiculous of an interaction this is and how long and drawn out the whole thing is before the cat disappears and he just peacefully is just floating along through the sky the whole time. A much less tranquil interaction then is that you can bully the cats with their balloons, sort of like how you can run over baby sacrets in Kanafa, which is a nice fact if you didn't know that one. You can also be a monster to these sacred impersonators. If you or your palico runs into one of these palicos that's holding balloons, they will fall to the floor and then lose one of their balloons and it will float away, and it's really sad. But if you continue being a monster to them and run into them again, they will fall over again and lose a second balloon, which is obviously even more sad. If you run into them one more time, they will fall down again, but this time they will manage to catch the final balloon before it floats away, and no matter how many times you run into them, they will always catch the final balloon. In a way, this almost feels like karting during a quest for them. The first two, not too bad, it's sad, but it's not the biggest loss. The third one, they will cling on to with everything they've got. The final thing that I want to specifically call out with these guys is that usually most of their sort of loop is to go get balloons from the lady at the entrance, then bring the balloons over by this palico, which is by the Aptonoth general store, and this palico is just raining confetti, having a good time, so they all just sort of hang out. Sometimes they'll dance a bit and then walk away, sometimes they'll just show the balloons and then walk away, but sometimes on rare occasion a palico will show their balloons, they will dance, and they will dance a bit too hard, a bit too much, and they'll lose control of their balloons, and the balloons will just float off into the sky and despawn, and then the palico will look really sad for a moment. But then if you follow them, they will go all the way back up to the balloon lass at the entrance and get a new stack of balloons, and everything is all right again. So a sad animation, but if you follow it the whole way through, they recover, they get more balloons, and everything's fine. I love the amount of tiny interactions like these that they place around within the festivals. It just really shows how much they care about what they're doing, and that they aren't just like painting by numbers when they're making this game. They're coming up with silly stuff just for the sake of having silly stuff. Little details that will rarely be noticed, but always be heavily appreciated when they are, and I think that is one of the defining features of Monster Hunter as a series. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Just a number of interesting and fun things going on done either within the game or surrounding it after the release of Title Update 4 and the beginning of the lumenhymn festival. If you've noticed any other things like this going on in the game, please let us know down in the comments below to share it with your fellow hunters. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.